Hey everybody, Chaz Patrick here, your guest for the Patrick Connection. It has been a while since we have connected, so glad seeing you. Thank you for joining. And so today I have such a special guest. This guy is phenomenal, uh, Air Force officer. Um, does some really great things as far as economic development, but I'm not going to take his thunder. So I'm going to go ahead and welcome him to the stage. Chris
Morning,
Pfaff,
Chad.
who good morning, Chris. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. So Chris is the CEO for the Knox County, Indiana Economic Development. So Chris, I'll go ahead and let you, give people the background about yourself.
Yeah. Do you want me to start with my military service or just
Yeah.
what I'm doing these days?
Yeah. Let's just go right on into it.
Okay. So I am an IU grad from Terre Haute, Indiana, originally. Actually, still live there, but work in Knox County and for Knox County these days. But starting, back, post undergraduate, went to IU Bloomington, and then went immediately into active service right after graduating from IU. I won't tell you what year that was. You probably weren't born. And then having been commissioned by the IU ROTC program, went directly on active duty. First assignment was in South Korea as an artilleryman, and then spent about 7.5 to 8 years on active service. And then left active duty in '97, and then came back to my wife and I are both from Indiana, and we decided to move back to Indiana. And at the time, I think we could have moved anywhere in the world, really. We were talking about some other places, even overseas, that were options, but decided to start a family and came back home. So that really started my civilian career. Because I had a break in service, and I'll go back and talk about that. But basically, after a short break in service, I rejoined the Indiana Guard, and then spent another 20 plus years as an officer in the Indiana Guard. So had a lot of different assignments. I actually changed my branch from artillery to AG. And then became a public affairs officer. I was the theater gateway commander in Kuwait for a while. I've had 3 deployments since 9/11, and then ultimately retired in 2020 after 34 years of service. So and then parallel to that, in my civilian career, because I was a traditional guardsman, but I got involved in economic development initially with the state of Indiana. So my first economic development job on the civilian side was working as a project manager rather in Southwest Indiana. So that's really how I got my start in economic development. So I've worked for the state, ultimately heading up their entire business development division before I left there. And then I went to work for Indiana State University, which has been the shortest commute of my career because we live just a bit north of campus there. So I seem to have about a 7 to 8 year shelf life wherever I go. So 7 to 8 years active duty, 7+ years at the state of Indiana, 7.5 years at Indiana State. And then after ISU, I went to work full time as a federal technician for the Indiana Guard. And again, that still had a bit of a economic development bent to it, / defense development. So we worked with a lot of state partners, especially promoting Atterbury Muscatatuck as a location for all sorts of training opportunities. So that was the last job that I had before I retired from the Guard, and then that was about 5 years ago, and then I moved immediately into this CEO position for Knox County, and have loved this job ever since. It's a great community. And we can talk about this in a minute, but a lot of good things happening here that are related to improving opportunities for veterans, and workforce and attracting folks to move to this area. So just lots of initiatives that are happening now, and it's been a bit of a diverse career progression for me. But I think my military service really served me well as I moved into a more traditional civilian job, if that makes sense.
It does. It does. So I was going to ask you, I know you hit some type of, like, you hit some nuggets on it. So how did that help you, like, with your path? How did that military experience help you transition to who you are today?
I'll be honest. There were a couple years after I left active service that I didn't quite know what I wanted to be when I grow up, and I always joke that I was 33 years old when I figured that out. But I did some various things after getting off active duty. I worked for the U.S. Postal Service for about a year. Got my broker's license in real estate, which I still use to this day, primarily on the investment side. But I do have my broker's license. And so really sort of explored a lot of different things in that couple of years before I started working in economic development. And I think, to answer your question, I think the thing when I first had to put a resume together, which I hadn't done, at all until I moved back to Indiana. I think the primary thing that for me, it was really about leadership. I mean, being an artilleryman, those skills, unless you're some kind of, international mercenary, I don't know too many civilian jobs that's looking for artillery skills these days. Maybe unless you got to work for a defense contractor. But anyway, I knew that Terre Haute and southwestern Indiana was going to be home. So as I looked at opportunities in this region, it was really, I think the leg up I had was really being a little bit older than other candidates at the time, and just the amount of experience and the level of responsibility that a young officer has in any branch of the service. I think those are the things that I brought to the table when I started looking for a civilian job and a career. And so I'd really point to that more so than the technical artillery skills. Obviously that's a pretty small percentage of opportunity there, especially in Western Indiana. But I really look back and think about the experience I got as a lieutenant and a captain, leading men and planning and thinking strategically, all those things that I think any organization could use. That's really where I think the benefit came from.
Okay. Well, like you retired as a colonel, right?
I did, yeah. And honestly, when I left active duty as a captain, you couldn't have convinced me that I was going to come back in and nonetheless retire as an 06. So that wasn't necessarily planned early on, but I think when you get out at a young age and you start thinking about how much time you've put into something and that you miss the camaraderie, you miss the mission. I think you miss a number of things, and so that really motivated me, I think, to go back in as a guardsman, and really, I think the total Army really changed after 9/11. I mean, I knew people in the Guard who had been serving for more than 20 years and had never deployed, had never been activated. And then obviously we know that life changed after 9/11, and it really, if there's a silver lining or a positive byproduct of that happening, I think it's that the Guard and Reserve really became a strategic asset to the Department of Defense. And prior to then, it had probably been decades since that had been exercised as much as it has. So, that comes with, there are both positives and negatives to that. A lot of families affected, obviously, by the thousands of deployments that have happened. since since then. But I really do think for the professionalization of the Guard and Reserve, I think that event really had a significant impact on the way we do business today.
Sounds good, and I think that still holds true today as we transition with the administration that we have and everything. So deployment readiness is always key. Got to be ready. What lessons could you provide somebody that's getting out of the service today?
I think the first thing I would say is don't be intimidated by taking your military service and really talking about that in a way that it's going to benefit a civilian employer. And so, for a lot of people, and I know from my personal experience, I didn't have a clear objective when I transitioned, and that took some time. But I figured it out, and I got into a career that I very much enjoy, and have been doing that on the civilian side for 20 plus years. I would also encourage people to think about entrepreneurship. Especially if you've got I think the mindset, and I really think being an entrepreneur is really more about the mindset than the technical abilities. If you get up every day and you hustle and you're passionate or motivated about something, especially if it includes providing excellent service, paying attention to detail, having kind of a multifaceted understanding of how to build and market and manage a business, then I'd certainly recommend it. Now, that's not for everybody. So I think when, Chaz, you obviously work for an organization that looks toward sharing the good news of Indiana with transitioning veterans. I share that. I share that motivation as well. And I would encourage folks to think about Indiana as a place to raise a family. It's very affordable, and that affordability. It's interesting because I was just out in DC just a few weeks ago, and my Uber driver was asking me why Indiana, and I said, and this was not rehearsed, but I said, the first thing that comes to my mind is the value of your dollar in the Midwest, and specifically in Indiana, affords you the opportunity to do so many more things. So if you're on the coast, I love visiting the coast, both east, south, and west, but the number of things. Let's just take housing, for example. We have been able to buy property in Indiana that there's no way we could afford in other markets. And so that, and especially, we have 4 kids, or have raised 4 kids. They're all adults now, but, trying to raise 4 kids and a family of 6, try doing that in Boston on the same, salary that you're making here. And most of your disposable income would likely be going toward housing and food. And so here, I think we've got the ability to travel while at the same time building a great career in a lot of different areas. So I really think my advice to a transitioning soldier is that if you haven't decided where you're going to either retire or have your second career, I would definitely give Indiana a look, because I think what you'll find, you'll be pleasantly surprised at the career opportunities here, the cost of living, and just the central location in the country. You can get, almost anywhere relatively cheaply. So those are the things that I think about. And then again, going back to, talking about the experience that you've had, don't shy away from talking about your leadership skills, because we all know that, whether you're an NCO, a warrant officer, an officer, we're all trained in leadership. And I think that really resonates with civilian employers if you can take that experience and talk about it in a way that it will add value to whomever that new employer is going to be.
Like it. Definitely some great points there, Chris. I want to note that you mentioned some stuff about Indiana. was that a combined response?
Yeah, I got ahead of myself there, but yeah. So like I said, why Indiana for us?
You're good.
When I was making that decision and transitioning from active service to a civilian experience, it was about family for us. So I know that I know a lot of veterans out there, especially if you're from Indiana or graduated from a school in Indiana, what's available here. But if you haven't been here for a while, you may be pleasantly surprised by the amount of just different, different industries, different opportunities, whether it's a defense contractor. You look at the things that are happening around Westgate and Crane, up at Grissom, within our, Guard and Reserve opportunities here. And that's the other thing is that, I didn't necessarily consider going into the Guard when I immediately left, but after about a year to a year and a half, it really started, I think, to call me back. And so if you're looking for a state that has an outstanding Guard and Reserve opportunity too, depending on what your branch or your MOS was, and you decide you want to, continue to serve in that part-time capacity, then definitely do some research on the units that exist in Indiana, because I think you'll find that there's a pretty wide range of things that you could do here as a citizen soldier that you may not have in a smaller state, or in a state that doesn't have the mix of units that we do here in the Hoosier State. Did we freeze up?
Yeah, and honestly, with the military retirement side of things, once you retire, your military taxes is in your military retirement isn't taxed.
Yeah, absolutely, and that not every state offers that.
So and the retirement points.
Right. So I think there's a lot of advantages for why Indiana. And again, just to recap, it's the cost of living, the continued service opportunities within a number of different units, centrally located, and especially if you've got family in the area, it's very easy to travel in this part of the country. And I know I'm a Midwestern by birth, but we really enjoy it here all 4 seasons, but it's not too extreme either way. So.
Awesome. Fantastic. Well, that's awesome, Chris. We're going to transition to the next point. What are some things you would like to close out with?
Well, if you'd like, I can talk about some of the things that I'm doing here in Knox County, which again is in the southwestern part of Indiana. And I've been, working as the CEO of economic development here for about the last 5 years. What you're seeing here is just some of the recent news articles from our website. And I guess a couple of things I would mention is that we recently were offered one of the Duke Energy Partnership Awards, and so this is an annual thing that Duke makes available to economic development offices. And the way we've decided to use it this year is that we are going to be hiring some professional generative AI trainers to come into the community to help train our marketing staff and some of the civic leaders from around Knox County on AI tools. I think all of us have probably dabbled a bit with either Chat GPT or I know I've used Canva AI a few times, but this is really going to give us an opportunity, I think, to introduce some higher level thinking when it comes to how we're using AI tools. So I'm excited about that, and we'll be doing that over the next month or so. Something else I would point out about where we are is that we've seen a lot of homegrown ag tech innovation here in Knox. We've got a great co-working and innovation space called the Pantheon, which is in downtown Vincennes on Main Street. And one of the companies that just had a round of funding is called TerraForce AI. And this is a company that basically is building a robotic machine that will assist in the harvesting and the planting of melons and other large produce. And so we happen to be the melon capital of definitely of Indiana, but we're the #2 county in the entire country for the production of watermelon, and we're the #1 county in Indiana for specialty produce production. So naturally, because of that, ag technology and ag bioscience is a big push here, and we've got a lot of entrepreneurs here that are taking advantage of that. And let's see, I'll just mention a couple other things related to what we're doing here. My philosophy on economic development is that you need to have a three-pronged approach strategically. One is business attraction. So we work at attracting outside companies to come and locate here. The second thing, and these are in no particular order, but business retention and expansion. So our office meets with most, if not all, of the local companies to ensure that if there are things we can do to help them grow, that's part of our mission as well. And then the third leg of that stool is entrepreneurship. And I mentioned the Pantheon, and they are a strategic partner of ours and provide entrepreneurship training. We talked earlier about about service members transitioning out of whatever branch they're serving in, and some of them may want to open their own companies. Well, if you come to Indiana, what you'll find is a very strong network of people who can help you think about those things that would be needed for you to start your own company. And so I'm very proud to say that we've got a strong partner here in Knox that's just hitting it out of the ballpark when it comes to helping people business plan, helping connect them with marketing and administrative details that they'll need to open a business. So that's a big part of what we do as well. And then I think I would just conclude by saying that, whatever community you find yourself in, I have a counterpart in almost every county within the state. And we get very involved in a lot of development activities. Housing happens to be one thing we've been working on. And as a matter of fact, just this morning, we were working on selecting a date for a groundbreaking on a new large apartment complex that's going to be built on the east side of Vincennes. So I've probably, worked with and spoken with more business or house developers and housing builders than I have companies in the last couple of years, because we recognize that we have a shortage or a gap in both quantity and quality of housing. And so we're getting very aggressive on attracting developers who want to help us solve that problem. And so again, I think you can find similar programs all throughout Indiana. But we've become very deliberate about the things that we're concentrating on, housing being just one of them.
Well, that's fantastic.
Yeah, hopefully that gives you kind of a flavor of the things that we're concentrating on. And one last thing I'd like to add is that we've got a few international companies as well. So we do some international travel and recruitment, known as FDI, or foreign direct investment. So we're very concentrated on the EU right now and Japan. And so we think that we will see some additional business opportunities in the coming years based on the efforts we're doing now to highlight the advantages of having a business here.
Fantastic. Wow. Oh, wow. Well, that was amazing. Thank you for sharing all that. That's a lot. It's interesting to see how economic development has all these different like touch points and pillars, and how some of the concepts all interconnect in some type of way.
And I will tell you this too. We talked earlier about the strengths or the advantages of having a military background. One of the things that I did as a strategic planner for the Indiana Guard is that I attended a lot of certification programs for strategic planning. And again, regardless of what industry you're in, I think that's a skill that's really transferable, that you can take and apply to any industry that you're working in. And so having that background in strategy really, I think, was a benefit to every organization that I've worked for since then. And that was just one other example of where my military service, in this case, in the Guard versus on active duty, but an example of where that skill set that I brought to the table for my civilian employers really, I think, paid off and continues to this day.
Transferable skills. Indeed. Well, Chris, I want to go ahead and take the time to thank you for your service to our country and your continued service in our community and throughout the state. We are grateful for serving leaders like you, and I want to thank you so much for joining the show today.
Thanks, Chaz. I really appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. Well, there you have it. Chris Pfaff, Economic Developer Officer for Knox County, and overall great guy. Definitely connect with him if you have any questions about, the aspect of the different areas of economic development. And until next time, we'll see you. Take care.
A thriving job market and low cost of living, plus a wide range of veteran benefits, make Indiana the perfect place for veterans of the United States military to call home. InVets can help you find that home. We're an organization started by veterans to help former service members transition to civilian life in our state. InVets can help you find the community with the career opportunities, housing, schools, and amenities that fit your lifestyle. To learn more about InVets, visit us at invets.org today.